She was just a quiet worker on a distant space station. Until one night, the sleepless heir of an alien empire stopped crying the moment she walked by. From that second, her simple life was pulled into the heart of galactic power, a human janitor chosen by destiny to calm an emperor's son. But in a palace built on secrets, comfort can turn dangerous, and every heartbeat could change the fate of worlds. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now let's jump into the story. Amira Quinn moved a string mop across the glass-bright floor of Arcadia Ring, counting strokes the way some people counted stars. She liked the rhythm. It kept her calm in a place where everything hummed and blinked and buzzed with power she did not own. The Nerian Dominion ran the station with perfect symmetry, tall figures gliding past humans who did the work that no one noticed until it stopped. Amira did not mind being unseen. Unseen meant safe. Tonight the air had that sharp chill the recyclers made before a visit from the Imperial fleet. Everyone felt it, even if no one said it. Rumor said Emperor Kaelor had arrived with his household. Rumor also said the young prince had not slept in 2 nights. Rumor had a way of growing teeth on Arcadia Ring. Amira turned down the nursery corridor, where the walls breathed a faint pearl light. She began humming a simple tune, a cradle song her grandmother used back on the fallen coastline. The mop swished, the melody floated, and somewhere behind the sealed door a thin sound faded to silence. She paused, surprised, then shrugged and worked on. It was late and extra credits came with the midnight shift. "Human, stop," a voice sang like metal strings. A Nerian aide, robed in pale silver, stood with 4 dark eyes steady on Amira. "State your name." "Amira Quinn," she said, lowering her gaze in the respectful way she had learned. "Janitorial rotation 3. Come." No more explanation, only a beckoning hand and the soundless opening of doors that never opened for her. Inside the Imperial suite was a sky caught in a room. Above, a live map of stars rippled. Beneath, the floor changed softness to fit each step. Amira forgot to breathe until she saw the child at the center. Small, luminous, with skin like rain on slate, his thin cry pressed into the bone. Emperor Kaelor stood beside the sleeping cradle, taller than the others, his presence both gentle and immense. When he turned, the room seemed to hold still. "Amira Quinn," he said in a voice that was soft and many-layered. "My son will not rest. When you passed beyond that wall, he quieted. We ask you to hold him." Amira nodded before fear could catch up. She reached out and received the prince as if he were made of light. He was lighter than she expected, warm and cool at once. His 4 eyes blinked, focused on her face, and his small hand closed near the edge of her sleeve. The sound of crying thinned, then vanished. He sighed, a tiny hitch, and sank against her shoulder. The room exhaled with him. Whispers floated. Stabilized patterns. Neural calm. Unprecedented. Amira barely heard. She rocked the way she had once rocked her little cousin through storms back home. Slow, patient, present. "Amira Quinn," the Emperor said, studying the child's now even breath. "For the length of our stay, you will serve as rest keeper to Prince Tavian." The title hung in the air like a step into open space. A human in the core chambers. A human touching the air. Amira bowed her head. "Yes, Your Majesty." After the Emperor left, a chief caretaker named Vera approached. Her tone was polite and edged. "Few humans stand this near the line of rule. Some will call it an insult to order." Amira held the sleeping boy and kept her voice steady. "He's resting. That is the point, yes?" Vera's gaze softened by a breath. "It is." The hours that followed were both simple and strange. Amira sat in a chair that adjusted to her back as if the chair itself were kind. She kept the song in her throat but not on her lips. The prince's scent reminded her of the first cool night after summer heat. Every time she eased her hold, he shifted, searching until he felt her heartbeat again. And whenever a door hissed, Amira sensed a tension like a tide pulling toward her. Curiosity, disapproval, relief, unease. It seemed the room itself was full of emotion. When the Emperor returned near dawn, Amira's arms ached, and the mop water in her memory had long gone cold. Still, the boy slept in the circle of her hands, peaceful as moon water. "You have done what our trained staff could not," Emperor Kaelor said. "You will be properly paid, and your work here replaces all other duties." His eyes, deep as star wells, weighed something unseen. "There will be talk. Let them talk. The child sleeps. Yet even as relief washed through Amira, the door beyond the door opened in her mind. The place where talk turns into plans. She did not know the shape of those plans. She only felt the edges and kept her breath even, the way one does beside a baby's ear. She did not know that this night would bend not only her days but the path of many worlds. And in that quiet, with the prince's fingers twined in the thread of her shirt, the hook set deep. Why her and why now? And what would it cost to keep a child safe in a house that held so much power? The aurora veil moved through space like a lantern on black water. Amira stood in her new quarters, which were bigger than the block of rooms where her family once lived. The walls shifted color to match her calm, settling into warm earth tones. A dresser hummed when she touched it, as if pleased to be useful. Vera arrived with a small smile that looked like a secret. Is the room acceptable? It's more than I know what to do with, Amira said, honest and a little shy. Then use it for rest, Vera replied. You will need strength. Hours later, the calm broke. A chime flashed. The prince keened. Healers moved like wind. Amira crossed the threshold, and all the complicated work fell away when she lifted Tavian to her chest. The noise stopped. Breath found its path. A healer named Mylan whispered, His patterns align when she holds him. Someone else added, Proximity must be maintained. Emperor Kalor stepped close, voice lowered. From now on, you will remain near him in waking hours as well. Amira nodded. The prince curled his damp face against her neck, his small hand opening and closing like a sea creature feeling the tide. On the second day, an elder tutor named Sael introduced himself with a slow bow. I study how minds learn, he said. I would like to learn from this if you will allow it. Amira shrugged one shoulder with care. I can only tell you what I do. I breathe. I hold him. Think about keeping him safe. Sael's eyes warmed. That may be exactly the lesson. On the third day, Emperor Kalor spoke to Amira in a quiet passage lit by living panels. Tavian's mother had a coastal lineage. Their families listen to currents others ignore. Our son hears feelings as if they were sound. It brings brilliance, brings pain. So he rests when someone makes a quieter field, Amira said, thinking it through. Maybe I do that without trying. Yes, the emperor said. It is not weakness to need calm. It is a kind of sight. Later, Amira watched Tavian stack soft shapes with his mind, colors blooming when he smiled. He was learning shields, the tutors said. Amira thought of doors that close against storms without locking the house to the world. The aurora veil descended to Lyra Prime, a world like a song. Spiraled cities grown from crystal and light, lakes that held their own glow even at noon. Forests the color of a cloud's shadow. Amira carried Tavian down a ramp into the breath of a new sky. The air tasted like spice and rain. Inside the palace, walls curved like the inside of shells. Light came from the structure itself, warm and even. A set of rooms soon belonged to Amira by necessity and decree. A connecting door recognized her touch. Even in this hospitality, she walked with care. Many eyes watched, learning what to make of a human with access. The first council session she ever saw felt like entering a deep river, voices layered in formal music. Prefect Kalor stood at the center. His skin tone darkened with emphasis. He spoke of order. He spoke of tradition. He spoke of human settlements investing in schools. And he called it a sign of unrest. He recommended restrictions and removals. His plan sounded tidy and dangerous. Then the emperor looked up toward where Amira sat. Amira Quinn, you have lived among humans. What is your thought? The chamber went still. Amira stood with the steadiness she had trained in long nights beside a sleeping child. Your Majesty, she said softly, if you close the door to learning, people will try to climb through the windows. If instead you light the room and invite them in, they stop looking for ladders. A mind with a path will not dig a tunnel, murmurs rippled. Kalor's mouth tightened. The emperor weighed her words the way one weighs a bridge before crossing. A path, he said, slow. Sael, draft an outline for targeted study and common benefit. Afterward, Kalor met Amira near the memory pools. You speak kindly, Restkeeper, he said. Kindness is not how empires endure. Amira kept her voice even. Rest is how a child grows strong. And when that child no longer needs your hands, Kalor asked, what then will keep you within these walls? Amira looked past him to the rippling light. What I do next must earn its own place, she said. That is true for anyone. She walked away with a new thought in her pocket. Care was not only for one child. It could be part of how a great house chose to live. But she also understood the warning in Caller's tone. When the reason the door opens changes, some people close it. The lesson sank in deep and quiet, like a seed in patient soil. Seasons turned on Lyra Prime, marked by soft sky shifts and festivals where the city sang through its stones. Tavian grew. His limbs lengthened. His gaze steadied. His mind found firm ground. He learned mental shields the way dancers learn balance. Mira was there through lessons, meals, and the deep blue hour when sleep approaches like a careful friend. In time, her role widened. She became cultural aid to the throne on human practice, not by ceremony at first, but by usefulness. Her notes on shared classes, fair trials, and apprenticeships began to shape small policy shifts that mattered more than their size. Human students were invited to study on satellite worlds. A clinic on Arcadia Ring received Nerian tools and human creativity in the same room. Modest changes moved like water, patient and persistent. Caller did not disappear. He remained the voice of the old, keeping its place. In private, his warning stayed sharp. You stand because the boy leaned on you, he said one dusk by the memory ponds. When he stands on his own, gravity will remember you. Amira folded her hands. I stand because I learned where the floor is, she said, and I learned how to invite others to stand with me. Tavian, now tall and lit with a calm that reached others, faced his first major court appearance. The council chamber filled with leaders from half the Dominion. Mira watched from the side, hand at her collar, the old "you can do it" signal they had adopted when he was small. Honored representatives, Tavian began, his voice carrying with ease. We have always prized order, and order has served us. Yet order without growth becomes a cage. I ask for a door instead. He spoke of an integration path, starting with education and work where all species could contribute. He spoke of measured steps and checks for safety. He framed it as strength, not softness. Kalor stood to counter, citing eras where identity blurred and power thinned. Tavian listened and answered with examples from the Dominion's own record. Times when new methods brought long stability. His calm did not crack. At a key moment, Emperor Kalor rose and said simply, "The proposal will proceed." The chamber rustled like wind in tall grass. The decision was not the end of a struggle, only the start of a more careful one. Plans had to be drawn, pilots launched, watch kept. Some who smiled in public withdrew support in private. A few tried to slow work with forms and delays. Amira learned how to turn a form into a path. She helped craft guidelines that eased fear while keeping the purpose intact. Late one evening, Tavian found Amira by a balcony that looked over the crystal city. The sky held the faint glow that Lyra Prime never quite set aside. I can feel the weight of their doubt, he said. It used to rattle me. Now I let it pass through and leave what's useful. You've been practicing, Amira said, proud. He turned to her with a careful tenderness that still held the child she once carried. I also know Father's time is a shorter line than he admits. I do not say this in sorrow. I say it because it asks for readiness. Amira's breath caught. She had seen the slowness in Emperor Kalor's steps, the extra pause at the end of long days. Still, to hear it named brought the horizon closer. I asked him to end the title of Rest Keeper, Tavian continued, not because it was small, but because it did great work and can now become something else. I want you to serve as ambassador for human affairs, with dignity equal to any seat in the hall. Not a favor, a function. Amira felt the shift as one might feel the floor of a ship change current. Kaller and others will fight this, she said, practical as ever. They will, Tavian agreed. But they have been fighting shadows. This would give your work a shape that law can hold. They stood without speaking for a while, listening to the city sing its low, continuous note. Amira thought of a mop, a lullaby, a boy's first deep breath in her arms, and a long path she had walked without knowing the map. She thought of the many hands who had helped. Vera with small kindnesses, Mylan with simple science, Sale with lessons that fit inside a day but lasted years. No one builds a bridge alone. The next weeks tested every joint in the plan. Small scandals appeared at awkward times. Schedules shifted without notice. Amira took tea with skeptics and spoke in simple words about results, not dreams. Fewer disruptions on mixed crews. healthier clinics where training was shared, faster repairs where human and Nerian teams worked side by side. She did not argue identity. She pointed to working parts. One night, Collar stepped from a shadowed arch, his expression unreadable. "You are more patient than I thought," he admitted. "That makes you more dangerous than I wished." Amira only said, "We are trying to make a house that does not leak. You can help seal the roof or keep your hands clean." His laugh was a short spark. "We will see which way the wind blows." Through it all, Tavian kept learning how to stand in storms without closing his heart. That was the art of his life. Amira's work was to keep the door open just long enough for the next step to become the floor. Emperor Kalor's final season fell like a soft dusk, full of long looks and work done with care. He formalized Amira's new post before the end, placing her seal beside his on a slim band of living crystal that recorded decisions. Not sentiment, he told the room. Structure. After his passing, the palace grew quieter and more watchful. Tavian took the mantle with a bow that carried both respect and resolve. The first months were a tight weave of ceremony, law, and sudden tests. A courier was caught with forged orders. A budget vanished into a tangle of committees. A gathering of old families hinted that the integration path would end with the old emperor. Out of respect, of course. It was the kind of respect that closes windows. Amira, now ambassador, did the work that does not fit into speeches. She met transport guilds at dawn docks and showed them how trained human crews had cut repair time by a third on Arcadia Ring. She visited schools where children of many worlds shared a lab and asked teachers what they needed to keep the peace while raising the level. She kept careful notes and brought evidence to the council, always in clear words and short lines. Vera helped by introducing Amira to those whose quiet approval could tip a vote. Leland organized a roundtable in the healer's wing to compare outcomes from mixed teams. Elder Sale produced a calm paper on social stability, showing that belonging makes better citizens than fear. None of these moves looked grand. Together they formed a net that held Kalar to his credit, argued in the open. "Identity dissolves in warm water," he said during one session. "Beware policies that feel kind but thin the strength of the core," Amira answered without heat. "This is not warm water. This is a forge. When we work together, we make stronger metal." Tavian listened, weighed, and chose. With his father's steadiness and his mother's deep listening, he learned when to bend and when to draw a line that would not move. He also understood something few rulers do early: how to bring critics into the circle without letting them steer the course. Several of Kalor's allies found themselves tasked with measuring the outcomes of the very programs they doubted. In doing the measuring, they began to see. The day of the Unity Charter came after a year of such days. No fanfare would have felt honest before the work. Now the plaza before the palace swelled with people. Humans stood side by side with Nerians and others from distant systems. Banners of soft light braided the air. The living city hummed a tone like the heart of a chord. Inside the great hall, the charter lay on a table grown from clear crystal. The words were simple: equal standing for humans across the Dominion. Pathways to learn, serve, and lead. Protection under shared law. Responsibility under the same law. It also promised tools, teachers, and time, because rights without resources are only pretty sentences. Tavian placed his hand on the crystal. The structure brightened, sealing his mark. He turned to Amira. "We began with rest," he said, so only those nearby heard. "We continue with work and care," Amira said, meeting his gaze. "Care makes the work hold." "Stand with me," he said. Amira set her hand beside his on the crystal. The palace itself responded, sending their paired imprint through the network of living stone that held the city up from its roots. Outside, people felt the floor beneath their feet give a small, warm pulse. Later, many would say they felt seen at that moment, and they would not be wrong. Kalar watched from the second tier. He did not cheer. He did not scowl. He said to the counselor next to him, "We will judge this in 10 years, not 10 minutes. The counselor nodded. That is the right scale. After the signing, the balcony doors opened to the plaza. Tavian and Amira stepped out into a swell of voices. No single song rose. Instead, a wide, many-voiced sound filled the air. Some called it music. Some called it weather. To Amira, it sounded like a bustling kitchen at dinner. Tools clinking, Water running, people moving with purpose and care. She thought back to the mop and the hallway, and a child whose breathing steadied when he heard a human heart nearby. She thought of the long circle from that night to this one. She knew the work was not done. The charter would need protection, and the door they had opened would need hinges greased and thresholds mended. People would trip. Some would try to slam it. Others would wedge it open too wide, and forget that doors also keep warmth in. This was life. This was the shape of a shared house. As the crowd's sound rolled and settled, Tavian leaned close. "Ready?" he asked, the old word they used for hard steps taken together. Amira smiled, the lines at her eyes holding memory and light. "I was ready the first time I kept him safe," she said, nodding toward the hall where a small cradle once stood. "And I am ready now." The crystal city answered with a low glow that ran along its bones, like a promise written in stone and song. The story that had begun with a quiet worker and a sleepless heir did not end with a curtain falling. It ended with a door opening and many hands, human and Nerian, steadying it as they walked through. And in that gentle, shared motion, the room on the other side became home.